The campfire crackled. Stars glittered above the Pacific Northwest. A lone tent stood beneath towering pines. Inside, two friends slept, unaware of the night's secrets. The air was cool, fresh with pine and earth. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, hushing the forest, but the silence was soon broken. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate footsteps, crunching on the forest floor. A low growl, deep and guttural, sent shivers down the spines of the sleeping friends. Something was out there, watching from the shadows. One of the friends, a young man named Jake, stirred. He sat up, heart-pounding, listening intently. He could have sworn he heard something. He reached out, shaking his friend, Mark. "Mark, wake up, I heard something," Mark grumbled, turning over in his sleeping bag. "Go back to sleep, Jake. It's just the wind." But Jake wasn't convinced. He slowly unzipped the tent flap, peering out into the darkness. The campfire had dwindled to embers, casting flickering shadows around the campsite. And then he saw it. A large, shadowy figure silhouetted against the trees. It was gone in a flash, but the image was burned into Jake's mind. Miles south, in the heart of Northern California, lies a vast expanse of untouched wilderness. This region, known for its towering redwoods and dense forests, is a haven for nature enthusiasts and adventurers alike. The redwoods, some of the tallest and oldest trees on Earth, create a canopy that shelters a diverse ecosystem. Beneath their towering presence, a world of flora and fauna thrives, largely undisturbed by human activity. The forest floor is a mosaic of ferns, mosses, and fallen leaves, creating a rich tapestry of life that beckons explorers from all walks of life. On a crisp autumn morning, two hikers, Sarah and Emily, embarked on a journey through these majestic redwoods. The air was fresh, filled with the earthy scent of pine and the distant calls of birds. The forest was alive with the sounds of nature, from the rustling of leaves to the occasional scurrying of small animals. Sarah and Emily, both seasoned hikers, had planned this trip for months, eager to immerse themselves in the serenity and grandeur of the redwoods. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, dappling the forest floor with patches of golden light. The towering trees, some over 1,000 years old, stood as silent guardians of the forest. Their massive trunks, covered in thick bark, seemed to tell stories of centuries past. The interplay of light and shadow created a magical atmosphere, making the forest feel like a living, breathing entity. Every step Sarah and Emily took was accompanied by the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, a reminder of the countless seasons that had come and gone in this ancient woodland. As they ventured deeper, Sarah, an experienced hiker with a keen eye for detail, stopped suddenly. Her senses were heightened, and she felt something unusual in the air. It was a subtle shift, a feeling that something was out of place. She scanned the surroundings, her eyes narrowing as she tried to pinpoint the source of her unease. Emily, noticing her friend's sudden change in demeanor, paused as well. Her curiosity piqued. "Look," she whispered, pointing to the ground. Tracks. The word hung in the air, filled with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The tracks were unlike anything they had seen before, large and deeply imprinted in the soft earth. Sarah knelt down, examining the prints closely, her mind racing with possibilities. Emily joined her, the two of them sharing a silent moment of discovery. There, imprinted in the soft earth, were enormous footprints. Each step was deep, suggesting a creature of significant weight and size. The prints were spaced far apart, indicating a long stride. Sarah and Emily exchanged glances, their excitement tempered by a growing sense of unease. The forest, which had seemed so welcoming moments before, now felt charged with mystery. They were far too large to belong to any known animal. The sheer size of the prints was both fascinating and unsettling. Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. A bear, perhaps, but the shape and size didn't match. Emily, too, was at a loss, her thoughts drifting to the legends and stories they had heard about the redwoods. Could it be something more than just an animal? Each print was at least 18 inches long with 5 distinct toes. The clarity of the tracks indicated that whatever made them had passed through recently. Sarah took out a measuring tape from her backpack, carefully noting the dimensions. The prints were fresh, the edges still sharp and defined. Emily took photos, documenting their find for later analysis. The two of them worked in silence, their minds buzzing with questions. What kind of animal makes tracks like that? Sarah wondered aloud, her voice tinged with a mix of excitement and fear. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Emily, her brow furrowed in concentration, tried to recall any information that might explain their discovery. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for them to uncover its secrets. Emily, her friend and fellow adventurer, asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "Do you think it could be—" She didn't finish her sentence, but the implication was clear. The stories of Bigfoot, the elusive creature said to roam these forests, came rushing back to them. They had always dismissed such tales as mere folklore, but now, faced with the evidence before them, they couldn't help but wonder. They decided to follow the tracks, their curiosity driving them forward despite the growing sense of unease settling over them. Each step they took was cautious, their eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of movement. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, now felt charged with anticipation. The tracks led them deeper into the woods, the path winding through dense underbrush and towering trees. The tracks led them to a clearing where they found a crude shelter made of branches and leaves. It was primitive, yet it showed signs of recent activity. The shelter was small, barely large enough for a person to lie down in, but it was well constructed, with branches woven together to form a sturdy frame. Sarah and Emily approached cautiously, their senses on high alert. Whoever or whatever made those tracks had been there recently. The realization sent a shiver down their spines. They exchanged glances, silently agreeing that they needed to be cautious. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, now held an air of mystery and potential danger. The shelter, with its signs of recent use, suggested that they were not alone in the woods. Sarah and Emily decided to document their findings and head back, their minds filled with questions and a newfound respect for the mysteries of the Redwoods. As they stood there, frozen in place, they heard a sound. A deep, resonating howl echoed through the trees. Sarah grabbed Emily's arm. "We need to go, now!" They turned to flee, but it was too late. Standing before them, blocking their path, was a towering figure covered in dark hair. Its eyes, two glowing embers, stared at them with an intelligence that sent shivers down their spines. It let out another howl, a bone-jarring sound that seemed to shake the very earth beneath their feet. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished into the undergrowth. Sarah and Emily didn't need to speak. They both knew what they had seen. They had just encountered the legendary Bigfoot. Section 5. Appalachian Echoes. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, an old hunter named Caleb sat on his porch, listening to the sounds of the night. The crickets chirped in a rhythmic symphony, and the distant hoot of an owl echoed through the trees. The cool night air carried the scent of pine and earth, a familiar and comforting aroma to Caleb. He had always found solace in these mountains, a place where the worries of the world seemed to fade away, replaced by the timeless rhythm of nature. The porch was his sanctuary, a place where he could reflect on the past and ponder the mysteries of the forest that surrounded him. He had spent a lifetime in these woods, and he knew their secrets well. Every trail, every hidden grove, and every whisper of the wind spoke to him in a language only he could understand. The forest was his home, his sanctuary, and he moved through it with the ease of a seasoned traveler. Caleb's knowledge of the land was unparalleled. He could navigate the dense underbrush and rocky terrain with a confidence that came from years of experience. He had learned to read the signs of the forest, to understand the subtle cues that indicated the presence of wildlife or the approach of a storm. Caleb had heard the stories, the whispers of a creature that roamed these hills. Tales passed down through generations of a beast that was more myth than reality. Yet the stories persisted, growing more elaborate with each retelling. The old-timers spoke of encounters that defied explanation, of strange footprints found in the mud, and of eerie cries that echoed through the night. Caleb had always been skeptical, attributing these tales to the overactive imaginations of those who had spent too many nights alone in the woods, a creature of immense size and strength, known as Bigfoot. Descriptions varied, but all agreed on its towering height, its powerful build, and its elusive nature. Some claimed to have seen it, others swore they heard its eerie calls in the dead of night. The legend of Bigfoot had become a part of the cultural fabric of the region, a story that was told and retold around campfires and in hunting lodges. Despite his skepticism, Caleb couldn't help but feel a twinge of curiosity whenever he heard a new account of a sighting or an encounter. He had always dismissed them as tall tales, the stuff of campfire stories. Stories meant to entertain, to thrill, and to scare the young and the gullible. Caleb was a man of reason, grounded in the tangible world of hunting and survival. He had faced real dangers in the wilderness, from bears to mountain lions, and he knew that the forest was a place where one had to be vigilant and prepared. The idea of a mythical creature lurking in the shadows seemed far-fetched to him, a distraction from the real challenges of life in the mountains. But tonight, something felt different. There was an unease in the air, a tension that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. The usual sounds of the forest seemed muted, as if the creatures of the night were holding their breath, waiting. Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that there was something out there in the darkness, just beyond the reach of his senses. He had learned to trust his instincts, and tonight they were telling him that something was amiss. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. A dense fog began to roll in, shrouding the trees in a ghostly veil. The moonlight filtered through the mist, casting eerie shadows that danced and flickered. The fog seemed to amplify the silence, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that was both beautiful and unsettling. Caleb felt a chill run down his spine as he peered into the darkness, straining to see through the thickening mist. A low growl rumbled through the trees, sending a shiver down Caleb's spine. It was a sound unlike any he had ever heard, deep and guttural, resonating through the stillness of the night. The leaves trembled, and the forest seemed to come alive with an unseen presence. Caleb's heart raced as he tried to pinpoint the source of the sound, his mind racing with possibilities. Was it a bear, a mountain lion, or something else entirely? The growl seemed to reverberate through the trees, filling the night with a sense of impending danger. He reached for his rifle, his heart pounding in his chest. His hands were steady, but his mind raced with thoughts of what could be out there, lurking in the darkness. Caleb had faced many dangers in his life, but tonight he felt a fear that was both primal and profound. He knew that he had to be prepared for anything, that the forest could be a place of both beauty and terror. As he gripped his rifle, he took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. The night was filled with uncertainty, and Caleb knew that he would have to rely on his instincts and experience to navigate the challenges that awaited him. Section 6. Hunter and Hunted. He slowly crept through the trees, his senses on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a jolt of adrenaline through his veins. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows and sounds, each one a potential threat or clue. The moonlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting eerie patterns on the forest floor. Caleb's breath was shallow, each exhale a visible puff in the cold night air. He had been tracking this elusive creature for days, following a trail of broken branches and faint footprints. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a mix of fear and excitement that kept him moving forward. The forest was alive with unseen eyes, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The ground beneath his feet was soft, muffling his steps as he moved deeper into the wilderness. He could feel the presence of countless creatures hidden in the underbrush, watching his every move. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the distant howl of a wolf. Caleb's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. He had heard stories of this creature, tales passed down through generations, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of the hunt. Then, through the trees, he saw it. A shadowy figure, barely visible in the dim light, moving with a grace that belied its size. Caleb's heart skipped a beat as he strained his eyes to get a better look. The figure moved with an almost supernatural fluidity, blending seamlessly with the shadows. It was as if the forest itself was alive, guiding and protecting this mysterious being. Caleb's grip tightened on his rifle, his knuckles white with tension. He knew he had to be careful. One wrong move and the creature would vanish into the night, leaving him with nothing but questions and an empty feeling of defeat. A massive figure covered in dark hair. It moved silently, almost as if it were a part of the forest itself. The sight sent a chill down his spine. Caleb had never seen anything like it. The creature's sheer size and presence were overwhelming, a stark contrast to the fragile balance of the forest around it. He could feel the weight of its gaze, a piercing intensity that seemed to see right through him. The stories he had heard didn't do it justice. This was something ancient, something primal. It stood over 7 feet tall, its shoulders broad and powerful. Their eyes met, and in that moment time seemed to stand still. The creature's eyes were unlike any animal he had ever seen. They were deep, almost soulful, filled with an intelligence that took Caleb by surprise. He had expected a wild beast, driven by instinct and hunger, but what he saw was something far more complex. The creature's eyes held a story, a history that Caleb couldn't begin to comprehend. It was as if he was looking into the eyes of an ancient being, one that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. Caleb froze, his finger tightening on the trigger, but he didn't fire. Something held him back, a feeling he couldn't quite explain. It was as if an invisible force was urging him to reconsider, to look beyond the surface and see the creature for what it truly was. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with anticipation. Caleb's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. He had come here to hunt, to prove himself, but now he was faced with a choice that went beyond the simple act of pulling a trigger. There was something in the creature's eyes that stopped him, a depth, a spark of intelligence that made him hesitate. It was a look that spoke of understanding, of a connection that transcended the boundaries of species. Caleb felt a strange sense of kinship, a bond that defied logic and reason. He lowered his rifle slightly, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. The creature's gaze never wavered, its eyes locked onto his with an intensity that was both unsettling and comforting. It was as if the creature was trying to tell him something, to convey a message that words could never capture, a look of intelligence, of awareness. It was as if the creature was trying to communicate, to convey a message that Caleb couldn't quite grasp. The moment was surreal, a fleeting connection that left Caleb questioning everything he thought he knew. He had always seen the world in black and white, predator and prey, but now he was faced with a reality that was far more nuanced. The creature's eyes held a wisdom that transcended the natural order, a reminder that there was more to life than the simple struggle for survival. It was more than just an animal, it had a presence, a sense of self that was almost human. Caleb could feel the weight of its existence, a tangible force that seemed to resonate with his own. The creature stood tall, its posture regal and commanding. It was a being of the forest, a guardian of the wild, and Caleb felt a deep sense of respect and awe. He realized that he was not just a hunter, but a participant in a much larger story, one that had been unfolding for centuries. The creature let out a low rumble, a sound that seemed to vibrate in Caleb's chest. It was a sound of warning, but also of curiosity. The rumble was a reminder of the creature's power, a subtle assertion of dominance. But there was also a note of intrigue, a hint that the creature was as curious about Caleb as he was about it. The sound echoed through the forest, a primal call that seemed to awaken something deep within Caleb. He felt a connection to the creature, a bond that went beyond the physical. It took a step back as if sensing Caleb's hesitation. The moment stretched on, filled with an unspoken understanding. Caleb lowered his rifle, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Caleb standing there, questioning everything he thought he knew about the world. The forest seemed to come alive again, the sounds of the night returning as if nothing had happened. Caleb stood in silence, his mind racing with thoughts of what he had just experienced. He knew that this encounter would change him forever, a reminder that the world was full of mysteries waiting to be discovered. Section 7, A Moment of Understanding. For a moment they stood there, hunter and hunted, locked in a silent standoff. Then slowly Caleb lowered his rifle. The creature seemed to relax, its shoulders slumping slightly. It let out a soft sigh, a sound that was both mournful and strangely human. Caleb took another step back, keeping his eyes on the creature. He didn't know why, but he felt no fear. only a strange sense of peace. The creature turned and melted back into the trees, disappearing as silently as it had come. Section 8. Whispers from the Wilderness. Caleb stood there for a long moment, listening to the sounds of the forest. The night seemed different now, somehow calmer, as if a storm had passed. He knew that what he had experienced would change him forever. He had looked into the eyes of a creature that most people believed was just a myth, and he had seen something there, intelligence, awareness, a spark of something more. Caleb walked back to his cabin, his rifle now feeling heavy in his hands. He knew he would never forget this night. He had glimpsed a world beyond his own, a world of shadows and whispers. Section 9. Beyond the Campfire. These are just a few of the countless stories whispered around campfires, passed down through generations. Stories of encounters with a creature that walks on two legs, a creature of myth and legend. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Yeti. It is known by many names, but its presence is felt wherever wilderness reigns. These stories are more than just tales to scare children. They are a reminder that there are still mysteries in the world, things that science cannot explain. Section 10. Join the circle. So the next time you find yourself in the wilderness under a canopy of stars, listen closely. You might just hear a whisper on the wind, a rustle in the trees. Keep your eyes open and your mind open, for you never know what you might encounter out there in the shadows. Section 11. Sleep tight. Thank you for joining me tonight. If you enjoyed these tales of the unexplained, be sure to subscribe for more campfire stories coming soon. Until then, sleep tight and don't let the Bigfoot bite.